Okay, welcome everybody. Can I welcome all members and officers to the Children and Young People Overview and Scrutiny meeting. So just to confirm, as a council, we welcome the use of the Welsh language within our public meetings, but as I have not received any notification or requests to use Welsh today, the meeting will be conducted in English only. But can I remind you that this meeting is being webcast, therefore can I ask you to turn off or silence your mobile phones and ensure you speak clearly into your microphones. Can I also remind all members to sign the attendance register and confirm if any apologies have been received for this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got 3 apologies. I've got them from Councillors Gordon, Overton and Seaborn.
Right. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Members, are there any you wish to declare? In that case, then we move on to item 3, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of June. Just to remind members, these minutes related to 2 reports we received on an update report on the progress and impact of accepted recommendations and progress against adopted action plans. Were there any issues for accuracy in the minutes? No, in that case, are we all happy to confirm them as a true record?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, then item 4, action sheet. Can I ask Geraint to update us on any outstanding actions?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's 2 items on there, but I did send an email to Dermot, but he hasn't got back to me ready for this meeting. So I've spoken to Leanne. We're going to chase him up to have some updates before the next meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah. Is there any questions or comments on those? No, then we move on to item 5 then, review of initial contacts and referrals processes for the ALN code. Is that right?
No. Review of initial contacts / referral processes.
Yeah, it's just on there and I'm just reading it out, which is no good. Okay, the purpose of this report is to set out the review that has been carried out on initial contact / referral processes within children and family services to ensure that there is a greater degree of effectiveness and efficiency in service provision. So can I welcome Jason O'Brien, Head of Children's Services, and Steve Trippier, Public Service Development Manager of T22, to the meeting and ask you to provide a brief overview of the main points within the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Yes, as was pointed out, the report that's before you today covers a review that has been taking place looking at our initial referral and contact provision that exists within Torfaen for Children's Services, in recognition that we have a significant increase in demand and in turn capacity issues within the service, but looking as to how we can both manage demand and improve outcomes for our service users coming through the door. Members will be aware that as part of the T22 transformation programme, one of the strands there was to review initial contacts and referrals to ensure that they're safely dealt with within children's services. I don't propose to go through the report verbatim, but just to highlight some of the key points and some of the work that's taken place so far within children's services as part of that transformation strand in looking at how we've reviewed our initial contacts and our front door. Members will be aware that at the present time a process exists where within children's services a referral or contact will come in through our customer care team, which will then come from our customer care team into children's services, and what we've recognised is that there's a doorway there that in some ways doesn't need to exist and almost makes some decisions in preparation for cases that come into children's services and almost indicate that some support is required where that may not be the case. As such, what we've determined through some work that's taken place and some analysis has taken place over the past couple of months, looking at the referrals that come through the door in children's services, on paragraph 2.1 we've discovered that we have in the region of 5,000 referrals that come in through children's services, referrals and contacts. Of 80% over a 12-month period, 80% of those referrals are generated by professionals, so we're including police, school, health, education, and other organisations. And some 56% of those referrals that come in through the door result in no further action being taken. So a clear determination for us there, through that analysis we've done, is that there's a significant amount of waste in terms of those referrals that come through the door, and a determination that a significant amount of those referrals are inappropriate referrals that didn't need to necessarily touch children's services or the children's services world, and could have been better signposted into universal services or through the provision of initial early advice, information and assistance. So trying to head things off at the pass, really. So 56% of referrals are coming through the door that ultimately become no further action within the world of children's services. And as I said, evidence is a great deal of waste, but also then impacts upon capacity, staffing capacity and staff time, and also impacts upon outcomes for those service users, because it could be that they're getting pulled into a service that isn't relevant or suitable to meet their complex needs or to meet their needs, whereas another service, if it was signposted, could be the more effective and appropriate service to meet their needs. We've also determined that our highest referrer in terms of professional referrer into children's services is the police, and that didn't come as any surprise to us, really, because based upon the nature of the work that we do. And some 32% of our referrals come in from the police, and what we also established was that some 46.5% of those referrals result in no further action as well. So there's significant, I keep coming back to it, a significant amount of waste and I guess clogging up of the system for us within children's services and within social care. But similarly within the police world as well, I think they've recognised that there may be some referrals and maybe some process that they have in place that means that they're referring through inappropriately as well. So going through the results that we've determined, Appendix 1 will show the current workflow or the current stream of referrals coming through the door, which shows quite a cumbersome process. And across that process you can see where at various points there's a determination of cases become no further action within children's services. But what I would point out to is within Appendix 1, from the initial point of referrer, there's a significant amount that come into customer services, into customer care, that then get transferred into children's services. And you can see once they get transferred into children's services, at that point there's still a significant amount of cases that become no further action within children's services. So again, coming back to the point of the amount of referrals that come through the door, there's a significant amount of waste and a significant amount of inappropriate referrals that come through the door that could be dealt with in a different way. So what we've determined through the work that's been done, we had external consultants come in, an organisation called Project Panda, who helped us with the analysis, to ratify the analysis and I guess strengthen the hypotheses we had that what we had in current existence wasn't fit for purpose and wasn't working. So through the work that they did, what we've determined is that exactly the existing model that we have, as alluded to within Appendix A, was highlighted within Appendix A, it isn't really fit for purpose because of the capacity and the impacts it has upon capacity. The process is cumbersome, and that efficient and effective decision making is impacted upon by process. And if I can give an example of where at the moment where a referral will come in through children's services, and by virtue of the nature of the families with whom we work and the level of complex needs and the varied needs they have, other agencies are also involved with those families. So for us, coming back to that major referrer being the police, what it generally necessitates is then for us to make a phone call to the police for information, await a police response with that information. That could be an hour, that could be 2 hours, that could be a day. There's often follow-up from that. So again, the process that we have in place, again, comes back to being cumbersome, and the process impacts upon our ability to make quick, effective and efficient decisions and point families and service users and referrers in the right direction at the right time. We also determined that outcomes of referrals aren't very often fed back to the referrer. Obviously, there's only so much information we can feed back to a referrer in terms of outcomes because of the confidential nature of referrals that were coming through the door. And we determined that the timeliness of decision making, as I just pointed out then, is impacted upon by a lack of multi-agency information. Decisions are based upon a single agency response. That single agency response very often being Children's Services. And a significant amount of referrals and contacts could be prevented from escalating into and through the system if we had the right amount of service and expertise and knowledge right at the front end when that family, that service user, without those referrers, are having that initial contact with us. So Appendix 2 shows the process that we would suggest is a more effective and more efficient process, where, to all intents and purposes, the customer care element of it, that door there is shifted so that the front door just becomes the Children's Services world. So any referrals and any initial contacts and any referrals and initial contacts come straight into the Children's Services world, and we can make those immediate decisions rather than coming into a customer care world for customer care, to all intents and purposes, acting as a conduit and an open doorway for those cases to come into Children's Services. I've pointed to the fact that our decision making at the moment tends to be a single agency decision making process, with Children's Services making decisions, and the fact that police are key referrers. So to that end, we've examined the effectiveness of building up a multi-agency approach in conjunction with removing the customer care doorway. We've examined the validity and the benefits of building up a multi-agency approach to decision making and service delivery, and to that end have managed to secure a police resource which can be transferred into or seconded into our world, into the a front door hub, to have more of a collective decision making approach, really. And then with Appendix 4, so I'm jumping around a little because I missed Appendix 3, but with Appendix 4 you can see then the early stage that we are proposing we would go down, in developing a decision-making hub. And within that you can see it's police and social care, including Families First, because they now sit within social care as well, and part of that initial front door assessment decision-making process. And then alongside that we've got a virtual world that exists of contacts with other key agencies such as education and health and the others that are listed there. So that's the early stages of where we want to go in terms of developing a decision-making hub. And then Appendix 5 points towards the broader world that we want, or the broader vision that we have, in including within that front door and that early decision-making process the key agencies that would be involved with a child and a family's life. And you can see there, housing, health, education, the key ones that would spring to mind straight away. The determination of us working towards a development of a service hub, or multi-agency approach to a service hub and a front door service hub, comes from experiences locally or regionally with other services that exist within Newport. There's a multi-agency safeguarding hub that exists, commonly referred to as a MASH. And the focus there is upon safeguarding issues that come through. Within Torfaen, what we're suggesting is that we don't just focus upon safeguarding, that we're focusing as well upon early intervention and prevention that comes in through the door, so we can make early, effective decisions and stop families and children and families escalating through our service. But you'll see, I think, some of the proof of the pudding is obviously going to be in the eating for us going forward and how effective we are. But some of the indications within the Newport model in terms of capacity, an increase in capacity, you can see on Appendix 6 that since a MASH has been in place within Newport, there's been an increase in referrals coming through the door, but there's been a decrease in the actual allocation of those referrals. So you can see there's been a number of allocations to cases within children's social care has decreased within the periods there from 488 to 242. So they've halved over that period of time as a result of the multi-agency approach that they've developed there. It's in its infancy, still in its infancy, so I think the effectiveness is going to be determined over more of a long term. But straight away, I think you have clear indications as to the effectiveness of a multi-agency model to addressing service users' needs right at the early stages. And you can see there from a police point of view, the number of joint visits the police have had to undertake, that's decreased significantly from 37 to 14. So not only is there buy-in from social care because of the impact it will have upon our service, but the police have recognised there's a potential positive impact upon their service as well. So in terms of, I won't go into anything in any great depth within the remainder of the report, because hopefully there's a lot there self-explanatory, and perhaps some of my narrative there has explained that a little bit more. But in terms of, just to come back to the scrutiny activity today, I guess because the model is very much in its infancy and being developed, in terms of the ability to scrutinise the effectiveness of it today, that's going to be obviously very limited. And going further forward, once the model is up and running, and we have the performance measures set behind it, and we are able to report upon the effectiveness or otherwise of the model, that would be the time I think that scrutiny, that the committee would be perhaps more scrutinising of the work that's taken place. But I thought it would be useful to bring it here today so that members can consider the information that's been made available to you and whether there's a determination of us going in the right direction of setting up a multi-agency approach, and in doing so removing the customer care front door world. And if that changes that direction of travel, it is correct, and that you feel that we will that it offers greater opportunity to have greater effective decision making and triaging of cases as they go forward, and again to consider then receiving update reports further on in order to evidence the effectiveness or otherwise of the model.
Questions or comments, members? Who wants to go first?
I think we probably all agree that the existing model is not fit for purpose, so something needed to change. It looks like it's going to be really good. Who is going to be staffing the new MASH? Is it going to be existing employees of the council, or are we bringing new people in? As our front door within children's services currently exists, we have 2 duty pods, one that exists in the north and one that exists in the south. What we're proposing we do is those 2 duty pods will come together as one, and will form the foundation of the MASH. So it won't be about employing new people, it's looking at the existing resource we have. We already have a decision-making process within children's services. It's about shifting that decision-making process more to the front door, and using the skill and expertise that we've got within those 2 duty pods that exist. So it'll be bringing those 2 worlds together. So for me, there'll be a great level of consistency, because it would follow that in having 2 duty pods as they exist, they will be managed by different managers, there'll be different personnel in there, so there'll be some different decision-making processes, by the virtue of human nature that will exist there. So by bringing them both together as well as one, decision-making will be more consistent. So the answer to the question is there aren't any new staffing implications, and the existing staff we have will fulfil it. So, with that in mind, based on the number of referrals that we receive at the moment, are there inadequate resources in place to deal with the demand? We are hoping that the service change, the change will deal with demand. And if we point to, going back to the Newport experience, what we're anticipating or hoping, and some of the analysis we've done points towards that, is that demand will decrease. Demand will probably increase at the referral point, but demand will decrease then at the point when we can determine no further action for children's services with those cases. So the staff that we will be bringing in, as duty exists at the moment, they don't just deal with what comes through the door, they then deal with the continuation or the onset of assessment for those cases, and some of the lateral checks and the initial assessments and proportionate assessments for those cases. But what we're anticipating is that we will be able to head enough off at the pass at the front door that then capacity will increase for those staff then as well.
I think, you know, I've got to agree with what Councillor Thomas has said. We appreciate that the current system needs looking at. But it seems to me that everything here is dependent upon how good the triaging is. And basically, who will be responsible for reviewing performance and driving the service improvement at the MASH? Because that's where it's all happening. I mean, I look at Appendix 1 and I look at Appendix 2, and frankly, I don't see a lot of difference, other than you're just cutting out customer care. So you go straight into a decision-making process with duty north and duty south. So who's going to be looking at that? Who's going to be driving the service improvement? Who will scrutinise the MASH to make sure that it is doing what it's supposed to do? And it is catching everybody, if you know what I mean. Because we all hear about triaging in hospitals, and when it goes wrong spectacularly. You know, they send somebody home, or you've got indigestion, and they get out the car on their front door and have a heart attack halfway up the path. So, you know, it is a complex problem.
Sorry, let's introduce myself. So my name is Stephen Trippier. Working for the council as part of their transformation programme, just to help them on their journey. I've worked across quite a few local authorities as part of their transformation. MASH is, as they're often branded across the country in England, Maru, for example, in Cornwall, one of the core elements of transformation to strengthen the front door of children's social care. A lot of our work as part of the transformation of the MASH or development of the front door will include a lot of the processes, streamlining the processes, strengthening the contact, streamlining contacts, providing feedback to referrers. So the triage function that maintains in the MASH, sometimes if the MASH is a single safeguarding decision-making hub, then other authorities often have an early help triage or an early help hub that sits alongside the MASH. The Cornwall model, for example, OPTIA has a sort of hybrid. We're looking at, as Jason says, triaging within the MASH. So as you say, Councillor, it's very important we have a strong triage function within the MASH. We have Families First within the MASH. We have the police within the MASH. Duty teams within the MASH to enable that triage very quickly based on the information that's coming through.
So could I just come back then and ask, are you altering the threshold? Because you've got a threshold for what goes forward in various stages. Are you altering those thresholds?
There's two strands on that. I think what we're doing, and this isn't to discredit customer care in any shape or form, but I think there's a level of expertise that's required in making decisions for the complexity of what comes through the door. So the knowledge and expertise. So I appreciate what you're saying. It looks as if we've just removed customer care from the loop, but we will be adding in removing the customer care from a high level of knowledge and expertise. And again, I don't want to discredit what customer care have done, because there's knowledge and expertise that exists there as well. But I think because of the complexity of what comes through the door, and as you rightly point out, the impact if a wrong decision is made, it follows that customer care aren't the right people to make that decision, and it follows that they should be filtering into children's services. But it's the immediacy. I think once you have a service user or a referrer that come to customer care, and then a doorway is opened and come into children's services, they're there within the system. They're stuck within the system. And also I think there's an expectation of a service that perhaps they may not need as well. So in bolstering up the level of expertise and knowledge there, the triaging, I would suggest, will be more effective. And as I pointed out, by bringing both both locality teams or both localities together in terms of north and south. That consistency exists there. In terms of threshold, there's a separate piece of work that's being done, that is being done along or inclusively and exclusively to this piece of work. I think we're going to be reporting on to members in a future scrutiny meeting, where we are looking at the risk management model that exists within Torfaen, and in conjunction with that, the thresholds that exist within Torfaen and the understanding of thresholds. Not just the understanding of thresholds within social care and our understanding of what we will and won't accept, or what meets our threshold and doesn't meet our threshold, but for referrers to have an understanding of the thresholds as well. And in doing so, in anticipation then that by developing that common understanding across the whole of Torfaen around threshold, amongst professionals particularly, that some professional referrers won't even make a referral into children's services because they'll have that confidence that this meets threshold. And I think it's important that it's about developing confidence. So what we don't want to be in a position of is almost throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and they refer thinking, oh, I don't know whether to refer this or not, so I won't. We still want to be in a position of, I don't know whether to refer this or not, so I will. But what we want to be in a position of is, I know I shouldn't be in referred. This doesn't meet children's services threshold. This meets somewhere else, so I will look somewhere else where this meets. We need to instill that confidence by having that common threshold framework across Torfaen.
Start, and of course that puts in why I'm asking it at this time is because of that threshold work.
So in terms of when this started, we are anticipating that the multi-agency decision-making model will commence within the next 2 months. I think it'd be safe to say 2 to 3 months. Obviously, there's some work that we still need to do underneath it in terms of some of the practicalities and things like infrastructure. The work that's been done alongside in terms of the risk management and the thresholds are 3 or 4 months after that will be completed. But what that doesn't, at the moment, we have thresholds that exist, and we have a risk management model. We have risk management processes that exist. So what we don't want to do is for one of the projects or one of the transformational pieces of work to stall the other. I don't think we will ever reach a point where we can do the big bang and put them both together at the same time. So it's important that we drive one of them forward whilst the other one, the work is taking place on the other one, and they can join up at a later date then. Yeah.
Just curious on one thing. So you've got to take out customer care at the beginning. So if I got this right from looking at this very quickly today, everything will go into this new multi-agency hub. Now, an important part of that hub, surely, with the nature of this, is quite complex notes, briefing notes, records, case notes, meeting briefs, the whole lot. How will that work in a multi-agency hub? How will it be effectively managed so the right decisions are made? Because obviously a whole part of this process is streamlining and stopping unnecessary referrals. So that paperwork's got to be spot on and be able to be accessed, as we said, in a multi-agency manner. So there'll be a number of different people from different ages probably accessing the same stuff. How is that actually going to work effectively and fit for purpose, if that makes sense?
In terms of, I guess, if I'm correct, you're asking in terms of, I guess, the administrative processes of ensuring this, that this form is completed.
Because where customer care, we're probably making initial notes, everything. It's been multi-agency, so there's probably a number of people. So if a case has got to be developed further and it's going to go on for referral, then obviously make sure all that administration process is fit for purpose and delivers desired result, i.e. reduce referrals where they're not needed.
So what's been recognised obviously within this is that if we are removing the children's services element from customer care, we're increasing capacity in customer care because we're removing the potential for 5,000 referrals to come in through that process. So in line with that, there's a customer care resource that will follow us into this hub. So in terms of some of the administrative functions, they will be fulfilled by still utilising a customer care worker a business support worker within the hub to do the administrative elements of it. In terms of the follow-on and the decision-making, within Children's Services we have a system called WICUS, which is our case management database system, and WICUS is the system that we input into and the system that we then utilise to track decisions, monitor decisions, have management oversight, and build up chronology of cases as well. So that will still exist. And customer care, one of the skills of customer care have is to input into WICUS when that initial referral, that initial contact comes through. So that strand will still remain in terms of the business support element.
Yeah, I'm just going to work through a few thoughts here. I was glad to hear about your work on the thresholds, because one of the questions I had reading it was perhaps the safeguarding training that other sort of health professional sectors are receiving. Perhaps there's issues with that if so many of their referrals are coming NFA. Then moving on from that, I was wondering if you could give us an example, basically, of how you envisage working. So at the moment, everybody just calls through to the call centre and it's dealt with at that point. I mean, are you looking for a different number, or will it still go call centre transferred, or how will it actually work?
In terms of the practicalities, that's some of the infrastructure we still need to build up underneath it, but hopefully we'll be moving with that fairly quickly. As I would see it, there would be a separate number. So if it were the same number, it would still be going into customer care, and it'd still be then filtered into children's services. So we wouldn't be making very many gains in that sense, because it'd still be separate number in that sense in terms of coming through. But what we also do, a significant number of our referrals, so referrals from the police, for example, come into a central inbox. So that central inbox will be within Children's Services. It comes into a central inbox within Children's Services. So referrals will still come in through those strands, but in terms of a number, I would envisage a separate number.
Just following on from that, then, I suppose the question is, what would be done to advertise that? Not so much for professionals, because they're going to have the links anyway, but especially for members of the public, And also, will there be alternative methods? Like, obviously, I was Googling around to see what other authorities were doing, and some people had forms and some had, email options. And I suppose I'm just really thinking about members of the public there, because they probably have less confidence in their referral, etc., and, more options to do that.
That's part of the work that Project Panda have looked at as well, is methods of referral in. I think if I go off on a tangent a little bit, but if you look at Cwm Taf, where they have a MASH set up there, they have a safeguarding website, and that almost follows through everything for a referrer, whether you be a member of the public or a professional, and that may be something we want to look at in terms of that. But in terms of the advertising, communications team are on board with us for this, so it's advertised effectively, and the methods are advertised to the members of the public, to professional referrers as well. And it may very well be that during its infancy that people will still phone up to customer care, but customer care can then say, this is the number you need to phone. But there will be, there's a communications campaign as well off the back of this.
Can I ask who's been consulted actually on these plans?
At the moment, the consultation has taken place primarily within the local authority. As part of the transformation board that's been developed, education and obviously children's social care. Police have been key players within this and consulted on within this as well. And what we've determined is, as we go forward through the project board, through the programme board that we have with this, is that there will be different key points when we will consult different organisations. The important thing, obviously, is that organisations and referrers know how to refer at this stage. And for a lot of our partners, like health, for example, the only change for them will be perhaps a change of phone number. But as we go forward and as we move on from the multi-agency approach in its infancy to the multi-agency approach in its maturity, obviously we're going to have to engage and consult with partners on a more on a much bigger level then as well.
That will be our social housing partners as well?
Yes, it will, yeah. And within, in terms of the ideal vision within, I forget which appendix it is, but in terms of the mature model as we look forward, housing are incorporated on there as well.
I'm looking at your Appendix 1 and your Appendix 2, and I'm looking at Appendix 1 and I see that, it goes through to, goes from customer care to somewhere, and then that goes to duty team to north, duty team south, which now presumably will form the hub.
Yeah.
But then I see on Appendix 2, locality team north and locality team south. So what's the difference between the duty team north, duty team south, and the locality team north and the locality team south? Or are they the same people? Right.
So locality teams deal with the more longer term work. So what will happen and what currently happens within, if I talk you through a process, so a referral will come in as it currently stands into customer care, into duty. Our duty workers will then do the lateral checks and the initial or proportionate assessment and maybe any Section 47 child protection investigations they need to do. They will take that to a point, and when it is determined that that case is going to become a longer term case, it then gets allocated out into the locality north or south teams. So that will still remain the case. So if it's a longer term case, they will be allocated out to those locality teams. So on Appendix 1 you have, so if you go from your duty north and duty south, these are your locality teams then, your locality teams are the procedure allocation, it's just the way it's worded, but here, these are our locality teams. Yeah, it's just the way that's worded there, so yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, well, and for me now, so 6 boxes along, for including the referrals on Appendix 1, 6 boxes along are your locality teams.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
it wasn't going from...
No, we're not. Yeah. Outside of the duty world, outside of the decision-making multi-agency world, the locality teams will still remain the same.
How formal would the MASH arrangements be? I mean, what sort of governance structure would be in place? So, or would it be a more sort of informal co-location of various partners?
In terms, I guess, in terms of formality at the moment, it's just with us and the police that exists there. So there's the relevant information sharing protocols being set up, just comment agreements that need to exist. So in terms of formality, and then in terms of governance, we've got a project management board that's set up above that, which will be looking at performance indicators. And reporting back regularly, but reporting back then to the T22 Children's Services Board. So there are clear lines of accountability and governance there as well.
If I can just follow on from Jess's question here, how will you manage potential conflict over case allocation amongst partners should it arise?
Hopefully better than we do now, or be able to say that it's not always a massive problem. But I think what the experiences that I've had from working within a multi-agency setting is you go through that storming, norming, forming process of a team, when people start to understand their roles and their differences of roles. And what we want with this and the value of this, obviously, is you will have different perspectives and different information that can feed into decision making. Any case conflicts or any conflicts that may occur will be escalated through our conflict resolution process and through any safeguarding processes that exist as well. I mean, I do anticipate, I think it'd be very naive to say that there won't be, at this point we'll be putting 2 different agencies together. We're agencies that work exceptionally well together, I would say. And I would hope that would be the case. I hope that there would be professional disagreements within the processes and professional discussions within the processes where, like I say, you're getting different perspectives of a case. But in terms of resolution, our resolution would be filtered up through escalation processes within the authority and within, as it stands at the moment, within the police.
Yeah.
I noticed the no further actions. Does it come about that when there's no further action taken, does any of these come back into the loop?
Occasionally, yes, they will, and there'll be some families that will come through and their needs that come through today will alter, and they may very well come through in 2 weeks' time with a higher level of need. And I think for me that's the crucial bit in terms of the multi-agency approach, is that we are targeting the right level of need when it comes to, or we're assessing the right level of need when it comes to the door, and targeting that with the right level of resource, and going further forward, as I say, with the mature approach within the multi-agency decision making. For me, that signposting will become, and the ability to access the right service for families will be more effective. But there are families, and it will always be the case, there will be families that will come through today that may not meet the threshold for service, that then something may go array or something may change within the next 2 weeks, and they may come through the door again and reach that threshold for service. So it'd be wrong of me to say that if we determine a family today is NFA for children's services, in 2 weeks' time they may require a service from us. What's important, of course, is that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and when we are determining at this point that a family is NFA for children's services, as your colleague pointed out earlier, that we are holding on to that information and we're able to track that information. So if a referral comes through in 2 weeks' time, we're not just looking at that referral in isolation. We're able to look at that referral wholesale and think, well, something came through 2 weeks ago here, so we can look at it now. That process that currently exists through the WICA system in any event. So there's confidence that if something comes through in 2 weeks' time, it's taken in the context of what came through previously as well, and cases aren't looked at in isolation. The strength of the new model, of course, is that we will have a range of agencies looking at the information they have as well on that service user, that child or that family, in order to ensure that we're targeting the right level of need and providing the right service.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question around, obviously I think the model sounds really good, but how we arrived at it. Were there any sort of other strong contenders, and how did we come up with this sort of solution as opposed to any other?
For me, in many ways, it was a no-brainer. In a sense of part of my background has been working within the youth justice world in a youth offending service, where 20 years ago a multi-agency team was set up, and the effectiveness in terms of preventing young people and families from coming into the system, has just yielded benefits constantly. So for me, the multi-agency approach and pulling other agencies that have interests in families has been a no-brainer. If you just consider the complex needs of any family, including ourselves, and the amounts of different services that any family interacts with, there can't just be a single approach to dealing with that family's needs wherever they are within the system. And then coming back, like I say, in terms of the analysis that we did that pointed towards the level of waste and the level of no further actions for children's services that came in through the door, that analysis pointed towards almost making sure that we've just got one front door that's direct into children's services, rather than a door that the analogy I use is a door that opens up and puts people into the porch, and then when they're in the porch they're stuck there for a little bit whilst we decide what to do. So I think for me it was a no-brainer. I think when we look at the multi-agency models that exist as well, through the Newport model, through the Cwm Taf model, through the hub that exists within Blaenau Gwent as well, it just pointed towards, let's have quicker decision making with a broader perspective of that decision making as well.
In paragraph 36 of the report is regarding the Chief Executive of Toby, etc. Following on a little bit from there, on my was in year 26, is that, thank you, Mariana, you're so kind to me. Right, where will the detective sergeant be based?
They'll be based the police resource will be based within the hub. Within the hub, the police resource will be where we haven't yet confirmed where the hub will be, but when the combination of the two duty teams as one, the police resource will be based within there. Sorry?
Where would you think?
The hub will be based centrally within Torfaen, so that we can access, the right services for families, and that we can, so that there's a consistent approach. So we haven't got a determination as to where it will be yet. We haven't got confirmation where it will be. But that police resource will come into that hub physically. So it isn't just a case of there's a police sergeant on the end of the phone for you. That police resource is there in the hub with you.
Just to say, I sit on licensing committee. Licensing committee relies heavily on police to do, underage sales and, stopping taxis late in the evening to check check everything's okay with the car. However, we know that the police often aren't available, so that we quite often get reports within licensing that say there's been no underage sales this month because we couldn't get the police. This resource will be for us. If there's a murder in Newport, we're not going to find that we've got no resource.
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the police in terms of any operational difficulties they may have further down the line, but this is a committed resource to Torfaen. It's not, like I say, it's not a part of the police service that we've been told we can phone. It's going to be a named officer that will be based with us.
Can you provide us examples of how this is working in other areas? I mean, you mentioned Blaen y Gwent, Newport, Cwm Taf. Any other areas it's worked? And can you also tell me how they deal with referrals from schools? Is there a dedicated route into schools? A person that deals with schools? I'd just be interested to...
One of the things has been, if I speak about the Newport MASH, which I guess is our closest, that's a project that's building, and one of the things that's been determined there, or was determined there, was that they needed an educational resource within the hub itself to deal with and manage referrals that came through, but also to be able to pull off the information that came through. Referrals that come in through from schools into our decision-making process will still come in the same way that, but will still be accepted in the same way that we accept referrals within children's services now. So if there's not forsaking the work that's being done on thresholds, but if a referral comes in from a school, it'll be accepted in the same way within children's services accepted now in terms of marrying it against the threshold and seeing if it meets or doesn't meet. Does that answer?
As to whether that service would be satisfactory for schools. Is there any way that we could dedicate more resource to their needs? And can I just ask, you mentioned those areas. Are there any other areas, perhaps where you've worked on England or wherever, where any other good practice that we can pick up from those?
I'll quickly touch it. So in terms of the education, that's work going forward for us. So we would want and anticipate a dedicated resource. At the moment, as I said, because of the model being in its infancy, that isn't there yet. But that's something that, again, if you look at the mature model, we've got a range of resources in there. I don't think, in terms of the model that we are devising, there's no risk to schools in terms of how there's no greater risk than it currently exists in terms of how they refer on. And obviously, what we want to do is build that and have a bigger vision on that as well.
Just to concur with Jason, that normally when we implement meshes, we always look at children's social care and police first of all, purely because of the key partners and number of referrals is a high proportion of that, and we would look at the education leads within meshes for that dedicated resource moving forwards. With regards to other authorities, just some background, meshes as they're branded occasionally or rebranded. Have been around since about 2011. For those of you who have done your research, designed in Devon back in 2011, quickly promoted by Aileen Monroe on the back of Rotherham child exploitation cases, and Oxfordshire and Bullfinch in 2013. Oxfordshire implemented their MASH in about 2016. And they were originally a lot bit, they had 20,000 referrals per annum, and by implementing the MASH, doing more robust thresholds of needs, using the signs of safety around the risk frameworks, smarter contacting, referrals back to police. So all the process work that we need to do to streamline and make our work more efficient, early intervention and prevention offers, which we're working on here. They've reduced their referrals to about 12,500 from the 20,000 they originally had. So they've managed to what we would call steady the ship and demand at the front door. But it's taken time, but they've got to a stage now, and it's been recognised by Ofsted as a strong and robust front door. And similar in Cornwall as well. And they call theirs a multi-agency referral unit, I think.
And jumping back, Councillor, I mean, what we recognise that education, just focus on the education element again, education are, the key players within our service and within and if you look at, in terms of the police being our highest referrer, the second highest referrer is education.
Yeah, I just want to go back because I've been round in schools, so I've been asking this random question for every teacher I come across, how do you find referring? But yeah, I mean, the feedback I got was that, the call centre was fine, but if you had a serious case, there was issues of it just sort of being treated at the same level. So it's good, that there'd be more timely intervention, I suppose. My other question, coming up with schools, because obviously you have a lot of time-sensitive issues because school kicks out at, and you've got to get someone there. But also, what are you planning to do with the out-of-hours service? Would that change as well, or would that remain with the same emergency service?
So the out-of-hours service is a little bit more difficult to tackle because it's a regional out-of-hours service covering the whole of Gwent. So as Torfaen in isolation, we wouldn't necessarily be able to implement change based upon the changes going forward for us. But I think there's discussions that to be had going forward. But at the moment, the out-of-hours service remains.
Your questions, I think, Jess. Who will oversee the running of the MASH? Who's going to be in charge?
I guess there's going to be different levels of being in charge there. So there's a governance structure in place, so the overall responsibility and the effectiveness comes into the Children's Services T22 board and a project management or programme management board that sits underneath that. In terms of heading up the MASH then, there's a group manager within Children's Services that will have the, or I would have the overall sort of Children's Services strategic oversight, and then underneath me there'd be a group manager, underneath that a team manager, and then the MASH structure as it exists in terms of the personnel of the teams, the North and South teams being brought together.
The model now, has this been taken from anywhere else, any other areas around? Were you involved with the model? And personal question, are you happy with the model?
I'm happy with how the model's progressing, and I'm happy that we're moving into a multi-agency approach. Again, coming into the Appendix 4 and 5 in terms of the model as it is in its infancy, and the model as we want it to be in its maturity, I'll be happy with the model when it's mature. So when we have a broad range of agencies, so again, it's not just two agencies, social care and police making decisions, we have the broad range of agencies sitting there. So in terms of happiness, I'm happy that it's moving forward, and I'm happy that we are where we are at this point. But there's still a greater vision for us as well. In terms of other models, I think we've already mentioned some of the other models that exist. And the Newport model, the Blaenau Gwent model, the Cwm Taff model. The Cwm Taff model, I think, is the longest standing model within Wales that exists, and I think that's received accolades from Welsh Government, and it's been cited as an effective model. Going back to my own experience, as I said, from working within the Youth Offending Service, where we were benefited because we had legislation sitting underneath this, which meant we had no option but to have a multi-agency team and a multi-agency service. And there's a lot of learning, that I developed from that many moons ago. But the effectiveness of that model, the effectiveness of that multi-agency model, I think the fact that we are now going down a multi-agency model makes me from happy to exceptionally happy.
Excellent. The only concern I have got is, like Councillor Karen said, is I can't see that you're going to have a policeman on standby. You know, we can't get hold of him. Even I can't get hold of him as a councillor, so I sympathise with you on that one.
I think just to come back, it's an actual resource that will be given to us. So it's not going to be a police officer on standby. It's going to be a named individual who they're recruiting specifically for this purpose. So and again, going back to my experiences with the Youth Offending Service, there we had police officers seconded into the service, and they were the property of that service. They're still police, part of the police service, but the Youth Offending Service managed those individuals and allocated the resource and allocated the workload to those individuals as well. It'll be slightly different within this because of the different nature of the work and the different focus that we will have as well. But that resource is a committed resource from the police.
Actually, I'm just saying now that it's 26 referrals a week from the police, so I can understand why they're prepared to allocate resource. The one question I wanted to ask was how will you feed back the outcomes to the referrers?
We've had some significant discussion around this, and in terms of, I think all we're able to feed back in terms of referral, because of the nature of what we deal with, because of service users' right to confidentiality and data protection and GDPR. Obviously, there's only so much information that we can feed back, and as it stands, that information would be we've accepted your referral and we're dealing with it. There may be, in terms of if, for example, it's a safeguarding referral that came through the door and child protection processes are instigated and we end up with a child on the child protection register, from the agencies who are involved with that child's life, they will know the outcome because they'll be part of the child protection plan, the child protection process. But in terms of the information we can feed back, it is going to be appropriately very limited.
Following on from where the hub is going to be based and how it's all going to be set up, I'm assuming that Duty North and Duty South have team leaders or managers in place now for their individual teams. Are we going to lose members of staff, or is somebody going to be demoted? You're not going to need two managers at the hub. So if you've got a manager in Duty North and a manager in Duty South, how is it going to be restructured?
Nobody's going to be demoted, and we're not going to lose any staff. There's a clear commitment to that, and this isn't about. This is about increasing capacity and outcomes, rather than, I guess, looking to make savings by salami slicing, in fact. So there's complete assurance that there's no staff will be demoted and there are no staff that will be lost. As it exists, the team managers that cover the duty teams at the moment also have a range of other responsibilities. So they cover, so the team managers cover the North and South duty teams, but they also cover the North and South locality teams. So what we'll be doing is creating capacity for them in terms of the longer term management. So immediately there's an increase in capacity without losing any resource.
Mr. Chair, can I apologise? I've been same boss, different department on the fostering panel. So, and I'm sorry if I'm asking a question that I'm duplicating from others. But elected members had a referral system with Catherine Franklin, I think it was. Is that altering from North and South? And are elected members aware of how? Because a lot of referrals come via the elected member as well. So, are we aware of how the referral system will work?
So the elected, if I'm getting the right gist of what you say, so the elected members' process is to come in through a separate inbox, and it comes through as a members' inquiry very often. That process won't change.
Yeah.
And those members' inquiries, if there's a members' referral, if you have a child protection concern, then they need to be made in the same way that you would make that anybody would make. But in terms of the members' inquiries that come into a central inbox that then are generally dealt with either by myself or Keith Rutherford or Jill Pratlett, that process remains unchanged.
Yeah, coming back to sort of advertising, I I suppose, and comms and everything, we'll have to work with them. But you're talking about the idea of perhaps a separate web page, or basically just moving the idea of having something on the splash page, because if the number is changing as well, just to boost the profile, because obviously corporate websites are what they are, they're sort of creaking structures of, years and years been built on, but, important things like that, it could be an emergency, and, it could be urgent.
That infrastructure, the bit that sits underneath it, we recognise that fully. I mean, one of the things I would say as well, and to recognise, is we've referred to different names they include in a MASH. Going forward, it won't be called a MASH. We want to have a different identity in recognition that this, like I said earlier, this isn't just going to deal with safeguarding. This is going to deal with prevention and early intervention as well. So it will. Even though we've used the terminology in MASH, I think we've used that as just a fairly generic term, but we will come up with a more imaginative name.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that, because I think it's really good that, obviously you want to bring referral numbers down, but at the same time you don't want to encourage people, if they're in doubt, not to refer, which, is obviously always a danger. So I think, it's this fine balancing act, but I think, you're going the right way.
I can just try to the whole focus of this is improved outcomes, and I think we need to be. It's not just around increasing capacity or reducing referrals. It's about improved outcomes for our service users. The top end of this as well is our looked after population, and having a high looked after population within Torfaen, and some recognition. That children don't always achieve best when they're looked after. So the focus of this is around safely managing the top end by safely managing the bottom end. But within it all, the focus, I keep saying that the focus is for outcomes for our service users.
I agree, and we were informed that the Welsh Government were hoping to put some numbers on looked after children. I don't think you can put a number on a child, personally, and I wouldn't like to see the Welsh Government put numbers on how many looked after children each local authority has, and it became a target and a list. Can I have your feelings on that? So.
I welcome that view, and yes, there has been pressure to put a target on a looked after population within Torfaen. Whilst we've resisted that target or the setting of a target, what we have evidenced, as is evidenced today, is the significant work that's taking place for us to safely manage our looked after population. And I think that's the terminology I would use, is about safely managing our looked after population as well.
And just for Councillor Seymour as well, that'll be our next scrutiny meeting, actually, we'll be looking at that, so. just to let you know. The only other question I had down was, because we've seen the appendix from Newport, so basically how were they dealing it before, and were they dealing with it in the same way as us before they went to the MASH structure? Or?
I believe they were. Albeit structures as they exist within all the children's services across the region, across the Gwent region, are very different. But obviously they've moved into this model from whatever model they had before, and it's proved, by virtue of the fact, by the nature of their decrease in allocations, is proved to be effective at that level at the very least. So they did have something in place before. I don't know what it was.
Just can I just clarify what the transition arrangements are going to be? Is it just going to stop being customer care one day and start being the MASH the next, or is it going to be a more gradual thing?
In effect, it will stop being customer care one day and the MASH another day, because I think the risk in not doing that will be a number of different doorways in, a number of different phone lines. But I think coming back to it's important that the communication is right in order so that when that does happen, it's not just a case of somebody going, I didn't know this was happening, that, as far as we can, everybody's suitably informed. I think whilst we're doing things in sequence at the moment and incrementally, there are some elements of it that it'll be a case of this stops today, this starts tomorrow. Otherwise, like I say, I think that would just develop greater confusion.
We were actually in pre-meeting, we were really concerned that you were going to do a gradual thing. We were like, no, it needs to just stop one day and start the next with the hub. So that's fantastic. Really glad to hear that.
Just really to sort of give you my idea of how I feel things are and where things should go, in the sense that, yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that there needed to be a change. I think we're all in agreement that this looks like a reasonable and logical way forward. We also notice that, you know, you've got early stages colo and you've got mature colo, and I think we feel, and we also are very well aware that the MASH, or the triaging, is the important issue in all of this. So I think we need, I think, you know, as part of our thing, we will need updates. Because as you said at the beginning, you know, what we're looking at here is an idea rather than a functioning unit. And as a scrutiny, we are better at looking at functioning units than we are looking at ideas. You know, ideas are always look good. There's always little glitches here, there and everywhere in their implementation. And we think, you know, I mean, I think anyway, and I'm sure that most of the committee will agree, that we need an update as things move forward and progress.
In terms of our presentation today, it's around that idea of what we're going to be implementing. So I guess from members' points of view here, when we come back in 6 months, 12 months, however many months' time, you've got the foundations there of the understanding of how this all commenced, what the principles were and what we were hoping to achieve from it as well. And I guess you can measure us, you can measure our effectiveness against what I've been saying today. So I hope I haven't shot myself in the foot too much.
Any other questions then, Les? I think we are. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and we'll let you go. We've been asked to consider then the issues are the model that currently exists in relation to referrals and front door processes for children and family services, and determine the suitability of the existing model. So, you know, are they going in the right direction? Is this right? I think we're pretty much agreed. And whether or not we want them to be coming back, which again I think we're agreed. Were there any recommendations people had come up throughout the meeting that they wanted to?
The only thing that I really think that they really need to do is what you pointed out, really. They need to make sure that everybody who needs to know about this needs to know about it. You know, this shouldn't be a problem with the police, because if they're allocating a resource, then they should be aware of what's going on. But I think you need to make sure that the schools and I'm not quite sure where all of, I mean, I can understand that. I was very surprised at the police level of referral. 1,300 a year, 26 a week. That seems an extraordinarily large amount of referrals from the police. But then again, yeah, I suppose. But nevertheless, I think, you know, I think we need to, the public need to know. We may get low levels of referrals from the general public, but I think the public need to know. We as councillors need to know, and I think they need to look at wherever else. I mean, they obviously get third sector referrals. The third sector are going to be quite difficult to get complete referrals out to. Those parts of it that, you know, those parts of our organisation that will automatically bring them in, I don't know, I suppose youth clubs and whatever that we run as an organisation. need to be informed. So it is a big communications job. I mean, it isn't going to be enough to put a few emails out and put it on our Facebook page and a Twitter page. Actually, we need to get out there and speak to these organisations and make sure everybody's in the loop and everybody knows about this change and why we're doing it.
And
Using mics. I think we need to be aware of any glitches as well. Like if there's a certain group that's not responding, that they're not getting any joy out of. I think we need to know that because we can actually talk to the powers that be to get some action.
Can I just suggest, as we get closer to them implementing the MASH, that that we have a member seminar to inform all the other members about exactly what's going to happen and how the process is going to be changing.
Yeah, I was just going to add on, because they were talking about having a web page, for the public, etc. That comms do some actual work on usability, because that could be a big issue. Like I said, when I was looking at some of them, they were so complicated that I was put off myself. And you can imagine somebody just clicking on that and thinking, oh no.
I think we also need to monitor the baseline of how many referrals are being done at the moment, and when they change over the system, whether or not there's a dip, whether people are put off by referring, or whether we're picking up more. So it could be either way, really. So.
Well, it did say they're expecting.
More or less the same as members. It was just I think Jason mentioned members may want to look at the CumTAF, the hub that they've got available on their website. I've just had a quick look actually as you were having a meeting, and basically it holds every bit of information that people who may need to refer may find useful. So it's explaining what the MASH is. There is a couple of online forms on there, and I think the only thing I picked up is that Jason said you may want to consider developing something similar, and that was it really.
Already put this in practice. Yeah. I were right there, weren't I? Another place. So we, at the present moment, because we're the odd man out there.
Well, I wouldn't say the odd man out, but we're certainly not.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing, because we want updates, and also an update when they're doing the threshold work, because that'll be,
Yeah.
We'd like to know how that's coming on.
Yeah, we'd like to know.
If we covered everything, then Jan will write them up, and then if we send them out by email and just check over that we're all happy with them, and it'll be sent in. Okay then, so moving on to date and times of the next meeting, which will be 13th of November, and we'll be looking at the Looked After Children Reduction Plan. So we've all had a copy of the pro forma. Basically, we're looking at particularly as anybody we want to invite to the meeting, or any extra reports we want. Oh, I was saying this. Can we all use our mics?
Yeah, we will be inviting somebody from the
Yeah.
children's sport, yeah.
Or if you want anybody extra, if you think that they'd be
All the children
worthwhile
take
coming
that.
in. But but yeah, if you have any ideas about it, just email it in and we'll deal with that. Okay then, thank you members, everybody for attending and contributing, and I close the meeting.